We must destroy them, or we will become them. And if we become them, we must do better. The US and Canada leg of the Clancy tour has finally come to an end. This has also inevitably meant that our letters from the citizens of Dema have also come to a close for now. And before we can make any theories on the plethora of content, clues and sub-stories, it's important first to recap on just what exactly we received and what it can tell us. I have a few things I want to quickly note before this video starts. Firstly, this video will contain sensitive or distressing topics relating to mental health. Please click off the video if such content is upsetting to you. There will be links to resources in the description if you need any help. You are not alone. There are people out there that can assist you. Secondly, this video contains a very colourful cast of clickies doing wonderful voiceover work for each of our letters. Links to their social medias or Discord accounts will be placed in the description as well as within the video. Please give them your support. The FPE exhibit was essentially a mini-museum the pilots hosted alongside each of their US and Canada tour dates. In the Bandito lounge, an area inspired by the Bandito camp, we received a fragment of a letter every single concert night from the characters from the Dema story. A lot of them are completely new, whilst a very small few are ones we're very familiar with. Altogether, there were 16 letters with 14 new characters. The first question people tend to ask when seeing new characters is if their names hold some form of importance. In this story at least, names do have meaning to them. The bishops are named after lyrics of certain Blurryface songs. Torchbearer is more of a title, referring to his role as leader of the Banditos, being the bearer of the light they represent. And Clancy seems to be a pseudonym that could refer to the nickname the Red Virgin Simone Weil took, who I go into depth about in this theory video if you want more of an explanation on who she is and why she's important. For a simple summary, she is the sister of Andre Weil, a member of the Bourbaki group who were the inspiration for the bishops. She also seems to be a very large inspiration for the story, or referencing how Clancy has always been considered as close to whatever bishop they serve. In these new letters, it's difficult to say. Some names have meanings that seem to just reflect the traits they exhibit in their letters. Some names could be in reference to historical figures, whilst others seem to have potential links to Simone Weil. The issue is that it's never consistent. Not all the names have meanings that match up to the content or have a relation to Weil. So for the purposes of this video, I will be mentioning the potential relations to Simone Weil at the very least, or any other important information that can be found relating to the name, just so you can at least be aware of these possibilities. The second thing to note is that apart from the final two letters, all of these letters are sent between citizens of Dema. It also seems that the bishops are in ownership of all of the letters, given that all of them, including the final two, are marked with the municipality of Dema's sigil.
Dear Elliot, I am filled with trepidation, nervous that my instincts could be wrong. But I must admit that I see something in you. Something that doesn't exist in the other citizens of this lifeless construct. I've noticed the way you look at my art, like you see something deeper in it, something the others do not see. It calls you, and maybe that's because I'm screaming for commonality with every brushstroke. You are the only one seeing what I hope for someone to see. My art, I hope, cries for freedom from these confines, and a whisper against the oppressive forces of the bishops. A whisper that has become a scream. Clancy's bravery has been an inspiration to me and has inspired this art. I only hope that I'm right to assume that you see the hues that the others cannot. I hope that this fire you feel can motivate you to join our cause. I think you are one of us, and we need you more than ever. Will you join us? hoping. Arya.
Dear Arya, guilty as charged. I feel it too, and I do see the fire in your artwork. It caused me to detect a like-minded rebellion in you. It stirred something in me, a feeling that has been dormant for so long, that its re-emergence has invigorated me with a newfound tenacity, a tenacity that I almost forgot I possessed. I too have been inspired by Clancy's boldness. Finally, there is someone that seems brave enough to lead us in some sort of uprising. I do want to be part of this. There are so many things to fear, but perhaps my biggest fear is to do nothing. I am here, and I will go into battle. I will support the uprising in any way I can. East is up. Elliot.
The first two letters are between Arya and Elliot. Arya may be a potential reference to the Decreation aria sung by Simone Weil in the book Decreation by Anne Carson, a book which I have actually owned for 3 years and didn't think I'd see any use out of. Meanwhile, given the content of the letters, Elliot may be in reference to T.S. Eliot, a famous poet who was a frequent art critic and also had written for Simone Weil before in her book A Need for Roots. The actual content of both letters do not reveal much, only a few interesting world-building tidbits. In Arya's letter, it seems that tasks such as painting are permitted within the city walls despite the bishops being opposed to creativity. However, as she notes, she's screaming for commonality in every brushstroke. She doesn't want her art to seem unique or if it has any meaning, likely due to fear of punishment by the bishops. The messages in her work are purely subliminal, much like how Skeld and Icy on the surface level seemed just like pop and cheerful music, but hid deeper, darker meanings inside so that it could both comply with the propaganda the bishops wanted to communicate, whilst also communicating the truth that Tyler wished to purvey in his work. Arya's letter also reveals that she knows of Clancy's rebellion, which seems to situate these letters as being sent after the events of Overcompensate, where Clancy recruits citizens from within the city walls. This fact itself isn't even speculation. It's backed up time and time again by later letters. These are all letters between citizens recruiting each other for the revolution. Elliot's letter is merely a response to the information brought up in Arya's letter, that her art hides secret meanings and that he too has been inspired by Clancy. For someone that hasn't ever left the city, Elliot's complimentary close of the letter of East is Up reveals that the Bandito slogans are actually prominent and known within the city as a secret. This is also seen in the next two letters, with Jansen signing out with Salo.
Dear Jansen, you have been a faithful and obedient loyalist to the bishops. There is honor in such diligence. But as scared as I am to confront your dedication, I have to urge to look deeper to find the truth in the bishops and how they have come into power. There are cracks, and these cracks should be peered into, searching for revelation. They are not a force of good. They are merely a force of tradition. I have dug deeper, and I know this tradition has dark secrets, and this God that they proclaim as honorable, I assure you, is anything but. I have found true freedom outside of these walls, and I yearn to return to that wild freedom. But we need help from people like you, people on the inside of the towers. I wouldn't be asking you if I hadn't detected a hint of doubt in the validity of vialism. I believe you do see the cracks. I'm hoping we can break them open. I hope you join us in destroying this tyranny. I hope you join our quest for actual glory. Sincerely, Mara.
Dear Mara, I am, and always have been, a devout vialist. I obey and give thanks to the glorious, like any good citizen should. This tradition is a comfort to me, and it is what I know. But I indeed have seen cracks. The bishops, our symbol of stoic control, have become frantic, and for the first time, unclear and worried about what is next. Keon's meant everything to me. It's not the same without him here. But I'm now seeing that Keon's is what I admired, not vialism. I don't even know what it means to be a vialist anymore. I see them differently. I see deception, and I see rage. Your letter has begun to ignite a new passion to destroy this construct that has deceived me for so long. You're right. The only glorious quest left is beyond these walls. Clancy has exposed cracks that I am now ready to break open. We have to act fast, before the bishops have a chance to react. I am willing to take the risk and stand on the side of truth. Salo, Jansen.
The second two letters are between citizens Mara and Jansen. Mara is one of the few names no one can really find a prominent connection for. Jansen seems to make up for this, however, because his name is bursting with historical information. Firstly, he could be a reference to Johannes Jansen, a poet who had very close ideals to Simone Weil. That, or his name could be a reference to the religion of Jansenism, created by Dutch Bishop Cornelius Jansen. The religion itself is a bit difficult to define, but it basically believed it had access to the true meaning of certain aspects of Roman Catholicism, and believed in more traditional practices. Mara's initial letter to Jansen actually seems to provide evidence for the Jansenism link, considering she calls him a vilist loyalist. Much like Elliot and Arya, Mara's letter does not reveal much. All it reveals is that Mara herself is a former escapee, having previously been outside the walls. It also reveals that she's aware of the truth of vialism. Whereas the bishops post suicide as glory and honourable, it isn't, largely because the bishops are just encouraging this to keep themselves alive. Whether Mara knows this because she's an escapee, or because Clancy seemed to reveal this during his PowerPoint presentation in Overcompensate, it isn't necessarily clear, but there is the implication that other people know about what the bishops are actually doing, not just the Banditos. Much like Jansen himself, his letter is vastly more interesting and information-filled than Mara's, largely because he seems to be the only citizen we receive a letter from who's actually a devout believer of the bishops and vialism. The letter tells us that the city has been changing since after Keon's death. Previously, the bishops were a symbol of stoic control. As noted in the Dema org Clancy letters, the bishops often controlled and guided the day-to-day lives of citizens. This probably left them feeling comforted and secure, knowing that the bishops gave them a sense of purpose and stability that was reliable. They planned practically everything. After Keon's death, the bishops started to panic and lost their control over the citizens due to this lack of composure. Now that the monotony has been broken with the growing Bandito movement, the bishops know they are no longer completely in control. They are worried about what is next. This tells us that the bishops started to panic about Clancy's realization that he could just Uno reverse the bishops and seize them back, and they have no clue on how exactly to respond to his threatening existence. Unfortunately for them, it's clear this uncertainty has started to show.
Dear Leo, I've noticed you in the square. The way you stare at the structures of our city, and even more, the way you trace the invisible path between the ground and up the towers. There are few engineers in Dema, and your skill and knowledge might be quite valuable in our movement, but that's only if you feel it. An unshakable yearning that we must stop the oppression in the city, once and for all. I can only hope that the legend of Clancy has created a wonder in you. We need your help. Your knowledge of the hidden structures in the city could give us the upper hand in catching the bishops off guard. Will you join us? Best, Nia.
Dear Nia, I'm embarrassed. For the hours that drift off following the city's hidden catacombs, it never crossed my mind that someone would notice my absent-mindedness. It's true. I've memorized these paths and followed them through this concrete facade more times than I could possibly count. It's an obsession, and I know them like the back of my hand, because I, like the movement you speak of, dream of escape. I have several methods that I've played out, but even if I make it outside, the bishops will find me, no matter how deep entrenched I get, and take me back. It's like Clancy's message has assured us, destroying this vialistic system is the only help. Our enemy is not this structure. Our enemy is their lies. I want to be part of what you are planning. United. Leo.
Leo and Nia are up next with slightly shorter letters than what we've seen previously. The name Leo once again brings up another Simone Weil link. He could be a reference to the philosopher Leo Strauss, who had similar views to Simone on the conflict of power, also basing a lot of his work and studies on Plato's ideologies. Interestingly enough, he was also a professor at the University of Chicago at the same time as Andre Weil. Nia, on the other hand, seems to draw a blank completely, having no historical figure or reference to Simone Weil at all. Nia's letter doesn't tell us anything new apart from Dema having engineers, and that these engineers likely built the tunnels beneath the city that we see the Banditos escape through in Nico and the Niners, as well as Clancy run through in Paladin Strait. There being few engineers actually makes a lot of sense, likely because half of them escaped when realising there was an outside world thanks to the tunnels, or because the bishops could not have too many people having access to these areas that are restricted, like the outside world via the tunnels, so only trusted citizens are assigned such a job. The fact that these invisible structures also link to the towers explains how the bishops are able to get in and out of the city to recapture escapees without citizens noticing. Much like Tyler and the Banditos, they follow the tunnels. Leo's letter in response merely affirms that the engineers are indeed responsible for the tunnels, and know that they lead to the outside, but are forced to keep quiet and within the city because they fear being caught. They know that being entrenched doesn't necessarily mean being free.
Dear Fredrik, the library must be a boring place, maybe the most boring part of our already dreadful concrete prison. But you don't seem like a librarian. You seem to have found a role in this city that allows you access to information and texts that most of us are unaware of. In fact, some of us have heard rumors of your stories, and our movement has become quite intrigued with your knowledge. There's more than they're telling us, we know that. We all theorize about the ancient Violist texts and wonder about how ancient they really are. We could use your knowledge. Your knowledge can help confirm our suspicions and inspire our quest to end the suffering of our people. We know they have lied to us, and you can prove it. Please consider hearing our plan. Warmly, Sara.
Dear Sara, I suppose I haven't hidden myself as well as I had hoped. Perhaps my arrogance at times has let my tongue slip in a conversation or two, and word has gotten around. It doesn't take long here. Rumours seem to bounce off the circular walls quite rapidly, and here I am, already hearing my own echo. It's true. I know more than they want me to. I found more than I should have. I have read contraband documents that make it increasingly difficult to stay silent. This new age of Clancy's uprising, his fight is sparking emotions that most of us have never felt. Rebellion is contagious. I want to be a part of it. Let's meet. Ignited, Fredrik.
Sara and Fredrik's letters bring up interesting world-building content once again. Sara is another name that, like Mara, can be a little weak or inconsistent in its links. Fredrik brings up a stronger link, potentially being a reference to the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most influential modern thinkers on nihilism, a belief that there is no meaning to existence. Not only have there been theories and debates in the clique for ages regarding nihilism's relation to vialism, from similar sounding names to similar beliefs, but Nietzsche is also often compared to having opposing beliefs to Weil. This letter is where we start seeing more of the influences on the Dema story that Tyler mentioned during the Trench era. The most obvious one in this letter is 1984 by George Orwell. Sara talks about Dema having a library, and that one of the people who works there, Fredrik, seems to have access to confidential knowledge, resulting in him being aware of the truth. Sara also notes that many people in Dema wonder how ancient the Violist texts truly are, which is briefly discussed in I Am Clancy. Tyler notes that Dema is an ancient city, or this is what they've been told by the bishops. There's simply no proof to back that up. In 1984, one of the main themes is propaganda and censorship. Books in the Ministry of Truth are constantly retroactively edited to fit the narrative that the governing body want to communicate to the masses. The main character, Winston, doesn't even know if the year is 1984, nor does he know if the things he remembers in his past are true, largely because they only exist in his memory. There is no physical evidence for his memories or the claims made by the state. Dema seems to operate in a similar way. The texts and books all fit the narrative the bishops wish to spin, that this is an ancient city. But this may not necessarily be the truth. Fredrik's letter, apart from repeating a lot of what Sara establishes, actually gives us a little more insight into his character. He notes that the confidential knowledge he has is actually contraband material. If you read between the lines, you realise that the contraband material he's talking about is Dema org. Not only was Dema org described as contraband by the bishops during its termination in Skeldenaisi, but Fredrik refers to this being the new age of Clancy's uprising, implying he's witnessed Clancy's uprising against Dema before Overcompensate. It isn't much, but it's interesting to see citizens also acknowledge Dema org as the start of their skepticism of Dema, much like it was for us.
Dear Rayana, you're just a silhouette to me, but your dances have become the moment that I look forward to most each day. Have you snuck a music box into your room, or is there a song playing in your head? Your movements feel like peace to me, like you're translating freedom to this confined population. I want to hear what you're hearing. I often imagined my own song that matches your movements. And someday I hope I can sing it to you. I have to confess, my admiration for you is not my only reason for writing. It's clear you've seen freedom. I know you've made it outside once or twice, and this seems to be how you tell your tale. There's so many of us that want to feel whatever you felt, to know what weightlessness could possess someone to move as freely as you do. Clancy's audacity has awakened something in us all. And a soul as beautiful as yours must want to get out again. Maybe you want to get out once and for all. I would love to tell you our plan. Chasing Freedom, Barea.
Dear Barea, that's me. I've always thought of myself as a lighthouse and less like a silhouette. But I'm sure my window looks more mysterious than that show that I'm putting on in my head. A lighthouse, I suppose, that may only be of hope, not one of dry land. I have a beacon there, and it's beautiful. Terrifying at times, but beautiful. They've brought me back, but they can't take those beautiful moments away from me. I remember them every night and play them over and over in my head, dancing as if to retrace my steps on a new way out. I, too, have been a quiet ally of Clancy, and his initiative gives me hope that we could get out and never be brought back. I want you all to feel what I have felt out there. Let me help aid your plan in any way possible. There is beauty out there that we all need to see. The Silhouette, Rayana.
Barea and Rayana's entrance marks letter 9, which also marks the turning point of these letters. From here on out, the letters become a bit more depressing, reflecting the reality of life in Dema and just how important this rebellion is. Barea seems to be a potential reference to Arturo Barea, a Spanish journalist associated with George Orwell via the Spanish Civil War. He's also compared to having similar revolutionary ideals to Vile, writing a book called The Forging of a Rebel, which was also edited by T.S. Elliot. Rayana, unfortunately, has no links. Barea and Rayana's letters together show us that despite the creation of Skeldenaisi and the content of Arya's letter, creative expression such as dancing is still forbidden in Dema, resulting in Rayana having to dance behind closed doors with her curtains also closed, her silhouette being the only thing Barea can see. And so is music, hence why she asks if Rayana has snuck a music box in. The mention of a music box in relation to dancing actually draws imagery of those music boxes with ballerinas in, which could make this letter in itself a reference to Holding On To You with the ballet dancers. Apart from that, Rayana is also another escapee, although it seems that she's escaped more than once.
Dear Kinton, I was the girl that put the yellow flower in your front pocket as you stood guard. I think I saw a smirk. We notice you daily and take wagers on what day you'll finally crack. But you stand at your post, solid as a statue, day after day. I must admit it bothered me at first. As I open my eyes more and more to the corruption of this system that keeps our spirits confined, I often feel a distaste for every institutional fixture that supports it. I've often viewed you as one of those fixtures, hardened and unable to feel the weightlessness of the Death Eaters. But recently, I've realized you're just like me. While I have been assigned to the Necropolis Gardens, you've been assigned to your post. Still, unwavering. My days in the garden are lighter than your days against concrete, and I felt compassion for you. So I picked the flower. I'm not sure if you know the significance of the hue, but if you do, I would love to discuss. Your strength could be of great help to us. In bloom, Jirita.
Dear Jirita, pretty name, pretty flower. I wondered if we'd ever get to speak. It's not every day that a citizen decorates me like you did. I've certainly endured worse. I thought I would be reprimanded, but then I remembered that they couldn't see it anyways, just a lifeless weed in my pocket from their perspective. I wonder if they can even see the vibrance of their robes. I wonder if they even remember what colors are. You were a great distraction that day. My bishop seemed more volatile than usual, and said that I had lost my dedication. There's some truth to that, because when no one's around, I'm only looking up, tortured by the wonder of what the vultures see, as they pass in and out of the walls so freely. An armed guard, obsessed with trash dragons, he said. How do you even know I was looking? I daydream of the other side of the wall. When I saw that flower, I knew you must daydream too. The surreptitious nature of the moment I found quite amusing. But more importantly, the rebellious nature of this mysterious plan has me intrigued. I would love to know more. Smirking, Kinton.
Jirita and Kinton are unfortunately another two characters who it's difficult to find any links to or importance with. Jirita's letter reveals to us something only briefly touched upon in Dema, and that is that there are also guards that keep watch in Dema, watchers, as noted in one of the earlier letters. These guards are also compared to solid statues, which seems reminiscent of the vilest statues we see littered around Dema in Nico and the Niners. This merely reinforces their dedication to vilism and the bishops. They're quite literally compared to unfeeling and unthinking symbols of the religion. The letter goes on to talk about these guards being unable to feel the weightlessness of the Death Eaters. This is again in reference to Dema, with Death Eaters being the name Clancy gives the vultures. The Banditos also refer to vultures as being eaters of death, which may also imply that Death Eaters are also Bandito terminology, and that they feel weightless because they turn death and pain into motivation to keep living. Jirita talks about the necropolis having gardens, the necropolis being the area where the neon gravestones are put, and also confirms to us that citizens are indeed assigned tasks by the bishops rather than having any element of free will. What is interesting is that this letter does imply that the yellow flowers also grow within Dema, potentially a symbol of the Bandito rebellion also starting to seep within the walls. Before we move on to the response, I would like to put out a little theory regarding Jirita. Given that her letters mention the Death Eaters, a term associated directly with Clancy and indirectly with the Banditos, as well as the fact that she also talks about a group within the city that watch Kinton and make wagers that she is a part of, the content and language seems increasingly similar to the Clancy letter 01807 Moon 05, a letter that refers to a group of people observing these guards to find the perfect moment to escape. A letter that associates the concrete city with negativity. My little mini theory is that Jirita is not only a Bandito, but she's also one of the many Clancys we see on Dema, someone who has once taken the pseudonym. Kinton's letter also gives us quite a bit of information. He confirms that the bishops could not see yellow, a code that was present very early on in Dema, but never really appeared again in the lore. In fact, he seems to imply the bishops are colourblind to some degree. He tells us that the guards are also armed, which just adds to the severity of life in Dema and the degree of control the bishops have. We learn that the Dema citizens and bishops alike call vultures trash dragons, which was confirmed by Tyler in an interview a while back. And we also get more emphasis on the bishops seizing vultures, as Kinton wonders how his volatile bishop knew he was watching vultures in the first place. I would like to add that this letter seems to potentially add more evidence to the theory that Jirita is a Clancy, given that Kinton refers to the process of being given the yellow flower as decorating. This may be a reference to redecorate, which goes into the lives of several Dema citizens. Tyler stated, redecorate is the precursor to Clancy, and redecorate itself has many links to Clancy. Redecorate isn't just about several Dema citizens, but also several people who go under the Clancy pseudonym. This is also something I've gone more into depth about in this theory video. The point being is, Jirita is associated with an action that in itself is associated with a song linked with Clancy. Funnily enough, speaking of references, Kinton's letter also ends on a reference to Levitate. Smirking. I'm smirking at fresh blood. Dear Pierre, your blackened hands are a dead giveaway that your work is done below the towers. You get bread every 7 days and never saw a word, but the black hands that take the bread tell me everything I need to know about your day. You work in death. Sorry, you work in glory. But I know you work in an amazing element, with properties that fascinate most of us above the surface. The alchemy of it all seems fascinating, and I would love to learn more. Would you want to teach me? In fact, I'm part of a group that is quite curious, and if you're interested, you could even join us. I'm sure it's lonely down there, saddened by the gone as you bend and twist their gravestones. I'm sure you see their faces, or remember your encounters with them. We all miss them. But you have to see them all off. I'm sure it feels wrong at times. I would love to talk about that too. We could meet in your district if you find a short leave. I can't wait to learn more. Curious, Karta.
Dear Karta, if you only knew how long I spend washing my hands, you would know how embarrassed I am. They don't want anyone to know what we do down here. There were even laws written about what we inhale and how deeply our skin gets stained. But you must be the baker, the sleuth who found me out. You're right. It's an odd daily ritual down in this cellar, manipulating fire and elements to craft a monument for the latest glorious gone. I can tell you that after this many years down here, the glory has indeed faded. It's only sadness. There was a time where I believed it was truth, but that time passed and only stains remain. I want to teach you what I know. Even more, I want to teach you how I believe we can break the cycle. Yours, Pierre.
Karta and Pierre are our final two new characters. Karta doesn't have any direct references, although it has been found by Keon's East that Karta translates to map, which then could relate to the Simone Weil map. Meanwhile, Pierre does have a more direct link, potentially being an allusion to mathematician Pierre Honorat, who had the same seniority as Andre Weil and also was on a spiritual quest with Simone Weil in Marseille. Karta's letter does a lot more world building. It turns out that the bishops aren't the only ones who make neon gravestones. Citizens are also assigned that job too. She also mentions that Pierre works with some form of alchemy, which is detailed more in depth in the second letter. We find out that these alchemists get bread once every 7 days, which could point to Dema generally not having a lot of food sources and having to ration food. The most important thing about Karta's letter, however, is that she finally gives us information as to how smearing works and why it does what it does. For those who don't know, smearing was first detailed in Dema and has only been shown in Jumpsuit, when Nico puts the black paint around Tyler's neck. Clancy noted that it was a punishment that caused the memories of something more to fade. If blackened hands are the result of working with death, and death is the end result of all living beings, blackened hands are a mark of acknowledging their end, their suicide. It's a mark of losing hope for anything different or for the future. Smearing makes escapees forget the outside, forget their memories of something more, because it makes them lose that hope of escaping, as they're quite literally marked by the suicide of others and are marked for their own death. The only end result for Dema citizens is to join glory. As for Pierre's letter, he reveals that the alchemy he works with is the manipulation of fire to create the neon gravestones for the glorious. The fact that this information, the ability to work with fire, is kept secret with literal laws being written as to how much fire they can inhale just reinforces the control the bishops have, as well as the propaganda and censorship they use. They're willing to use a symbol of the natural world and the Banditos for their own goals, but still maintain this illusion of the neon city to the citizens. The fire is not important fundamentally to their culture, and that fire itself is something dangerous, unorthodox, and heretical. The final two letters are between characters we actually do know. We have a letter from the Torchbearer to Clancy, and a letter from the bishops to Clancy. These two letters are inextricably linked, not just because they're both to Clancy, but also because of the presentation of these letters. Torchbearer's letter was completed on the final concert of the Canada leg. Before the letter was even found, the clique knew something different was going to happen with this letter's reveal. Why? Because the official Blurryface account reactivated to post an image of the location of the final letter. The previous activity of the account before that was when Blurryface tweeted that they'd always been watching us. This was followed by the violation code appearing on the 9th concert during the visuals of the judge live. So, Blurryface guiding the clique to the letter only highlighted that the bishops were still watching us. Things only grew more dismal when the letter was actually discovered. It was stuck to the top of a post, the Bandito flag next to it having been ripped. Another set of letters surrounded the Bandito tent, letters from the bishops, all with Dear Clancy scrawled on in red, and black handprints on the page. The Torchbearer letter too was a victim to this treatment. Dear Clancy covering most of the words for that segment, the black paint actually blurring out Clancy's name. The final detail to note in this destroyed Bandito encampment was that on the same post where the letter was attached, a red robe had also been hung from it. This red robe had been taken elsewhere from the exhibit. Particularly, it had been the robe representing Keon's after his death.
Dear Clancy, you are what they said you were. I see the weathering on your face and the journey you've been on. Although we were away, I hope you know that I've never left you. It's time, Clancy. They believe in the movement. They are ready for this oppression to end. They are ready to defeat this archaic rule once and for all. We can meet out in Trench at camp to lay out our plan. We will bring you everything you need. You have the support from Yellow and Red now, and our militia is strong. No matter what, when the day comes, we will get you to the tower. Covering you, TB.
The enemies of the city are planning to take your city from you. We have watched their plans come together. The sacred municipality of Dema will keep you safe. Report any unusual perimeter activity immediately.
Torchbearer's letter now gives us a more concise timeline as to when all of these letters were written, save for the bishop's letter. Given that he talks about the Yellow and Red militia and the plan to get Clancy into the tower, these letters all take place before the events of Paladin Strait. This also confirms to us that the Banditos coming from outside of the city was only part of the plan, and that the citizens from Overcompensate were also going to start a rebellion within the city as well. However, given that Torchbearer mentions that he will meet Clancy in the camp in Trench, this implies the letter may have been sent directly after the events of Overcompensate, when Clancy first came back from Voldsoy, and before the events of Navigating. After all, why send a letter to someone already entrenched, let alone living with you in the Bandito camp? The fact that Clancy looks shocked to learn that Torchbearer was never with him throughout Skeld and Icy, as well as the fact that this letter is in the possession of the bishops, after all it has the municipality insignia on it, red writing from the bishops and is also torn into segments, suggests that this letter, much like the others we have seen throughout the FPE exhibit, was intercepted by the bishops. The warning letter sent by Dema proves this. They intercepted the letters sent by citizens and by the Torchbearer. They used this information to watch the plans of revolution come together. This explains why before Paladin Strait released, it was the blurry-faced Twitter account that gave us access to a teaser of the music video, a teaser containing violation codes. They've known the plan for Paladin Strait and were able to prepare for it. This explains why they were already seizing the vultures around the city before the Banditos came. It explains why Nico was separate and attacked Clancy after lulling him into a false sense of security. And it explains why the rebels from Overcompensate are nowhere to be seen. They were likely captured and either punished or forced to commit vialism. This also may potentially imply that the other bishops we saw in Paladin Strait were fakes, hence why they were defeated incredibly easily, as the bishops were already aware of the plan to climb up the towers. But this is merely a theory, nothing confirmed as of yet. All in all, these final two letters tell us that the situation is dire for the revolution. It has already failed. Clancy is captured in the tower. The status of the Banditos are unknown, given that the Watchers and Vilist loyalists have been told to watch out for them, and the rebels within the city have likely been captured and killed. It sets a very interesting scene for what could come in 2025, especially considering that these letters contain the secret code of "we must destroy them or we will become them, and if we become them, we must do better." And for those that are wondering where the story feasibly could go from here, don't worry, I'll be covering that next week. And that's it for this video, and oh my god, it's the longest video I've ever produced. Who would have thought? Not me, I thought this was going to be like an 18-minute done and dusted. But massive thank you once again to everybody that offered to do the voiceovers for the letters. It's greatly appreciated. It helped bring this video to life, and all of these people are incredibly talented. Please, please, please go check them out. It was fantastic being able to work with so many Click members, and I'm sorry if I don't sound like too enthusiastic or just incredibly tired. It's because I am tired. I've just come home from university and I'm recording this, so it's been a difficult one. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching this little recap into the FPE exhibit. I'll see you soon with another theory.